out, meet the author.
What is going on, everybody? Back again here for Rolling Out Meet the Author, your host, Malik Brown. And of course, every time I say meet the author, that means we have an amazing special guest with us today that has written an amazing book. And today I am with no other than Miss Mary Frances Winters. She is the author of Racial Justice at Work, Practical Solutions for Systemic Change. Miss Winters, how are you doing today?
I am doing so well. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for joining us and being able to talk to us about this book that you've written, Racial Justice at Work. So, I mean, I feel like the title says it all. But if you could just, let the people know what this book is all about.
Yeah, thank you so much. So this book is about implementing very actionable steps towards justice, not just equality, not just equity, but justice. Many of our clients, so I run the Winters Group Incorporated. We've been in business now for 39 years doing this work. And when I tell people it's been 39 years, they sometimes say, oh, we've been doing this for that long? Yes, and a lot longer, as we know. But we've often hear from clients, we started with diversity, then we went to inclusion, then we went to equity. And now some organizations are putting the J in the name, DEIJ or JEDI, JEDI. And my sense is that they don't really know what justice is, to be justice-centered or justice-focused, because so equality basically means that you treat everybody the same. I treat everybody the same. Equity means that you look at those differences and that, everybody doesn't need the same thing. And so we should be treating people based on what they need. But justice means we correct the harm that has been done. And that's where people get really hung up about correcting the harm. We haven't made progress. My previous book was called Black Fatigue, How Racism Erodes the Mind, Body, and Spirit. This is kind of a follow-up to say, okay, how do we stop doing that? Especially in the workplace. So our business, we work with clients, big, large organizations that have diversity in their ranks, and they're trying to understand how can we treat people fairly, justly. And so this book gives them the practical solutions. And I'm not the only author of the book. This book was written by me and 11 other members of my team as emerging thought leaders in this field, and I wanted their voices to be heard as well.
Love that so much. And of course, you mentioned, you wrote Black Fatigue in 2020, correct?
Yes.
Now we're in 2023, Racial Justice at Work. From then to now, have you seen any changes? Where are we missing the mark? What do you think needs to change from Black Fatigue to racial justice now?
I think that we lifted up the issues in 2020, of course, with the murder of George Floyd and others, and there seemed to be a racial reckoning of sorts at that time when organizations were saying to me, oh, I didn't know racism was still such a problem. I wanted to say, what have I been telling you for the past 30 some years? However, okay, you didn't know, now you know, okay? And so many organizations did come up with these strategies, and they came out with these statements of what they were going to do. So we thought, oh, wow, maybe this is a movement, and we hope it's not just a moment. But now sadly, Malik, I think it's just a memory, because they're backpedaling. And why we hear them backpedaling is, oh, our leaders aren't ready for this, or, oh, this makes our leaders uncomfortable, or, oh, why are we just focusing on race? So it's kind of the same old story. We got that blip back in 2020, and now we're seeing that it is fast fading.
You spoke about, it's not just you who was a part of this book, but 11 other writers. How was that process, coming together, 12 minds coming together in one book, trying to get the same message across? How was that process?
Well, it was laborious, and at sometimes a little, painful. However, my team is just an amazing team, and each person, in part 2 of the book, we actually break it down. Like, let's look at justice in marketing and advertising. Let's look at justice in philanthropy. Let's look at justice in algorithms and technology. Let's look at it when we talk about human resources and those kinds of practices and policies. Let's look at what reparations might look like. So each member of the team took, a topic, if you will, and they took that topic and they explored actual outcomes, actual strategies, actual actions that organizations could take if, in fact, they were serious about implementing with a justice-centered lens.
For you, I want to know what was one of the best parts about writing this book?
Oh, the best part about writing the book was being able to include my team because I purposefully, as I said, I've been doing this work now for almost 40 years. It'll be 39 years very soon. And I want to have a legacy. I want to have that next generation to have a voice. And so some of the people who wrote the book, this is their first job out of college, but they have a passion for this work. They studied this work in their schooling, and they come with perspective. They come, and that perspective is different. I'm from a different generation. And so that perspective is different. So I wanted to be sure that we were amplifying the voices of that next generation. So that was the best part of writing the book.
And you talk about perspective and, getting, 12 different people's perspective. Like you said, you had people just come out of college, so they may be young and talking about racial justice. Like you've talked about, you've been doing this for over 30 years. So you have a different perspective. I mean, how big is perspective when it comes to racial justice, do you think?
That's a very good question. And I think that there are boundaries, if you will. So we have to be of one mind. And there's a whole chapter on defining justice because people have different definitions. So I wrote a whole chapter on what do we mean, when we talk about justice. Oftentimes people will think, well, you mean fairness. Justice is fairness. And I have a whole section in the book called The Fallacy of Fairness, because fairness is usually seen from an interpersonal perspective. It means, oh, you got this job and I didn't. That's not fair. I don't think it's fair because it's not fair to me. But we have to look at fairness in a bigger, more systemic way and not just be so individualistic. And in this country, we're very individualistic. We saw that with people wearing masks. I don't want to wear a mask. Well, you're not caring about your fellow human when you say that. Maybe you don't want to wear a mask, but to protect someone else. And so if we want racial justice, we have to get outside of just looking at what's fair to me and look at it from a systemic perspective. So we've defined justice as being beyond fairness and being correcting the harm, that has been done, because, America has never apologized for slavery. That's a start. And people say, well, what will that do? Well, what that will do is at least it's an acknowledgement. And then decisions that get made from there, particularly those political decisions where you hear politicians say, well, we don't have systemic racism, anymore. That narrative would change because there would have been an acknowledgement that this was wrong, and that there needs to be some correction for it. There's been something in Congress to study reparations, HR 40, Bill HR 40. It's never gone anywhere, and that's just to study it, just to even study it. And people don't want to even even study it. And so when we say justice, and these organizations that put justice in their acronym, they need to know what justice really means. And justice is just not another program. It's just not another placating people. It really does mean repairing harm.
And when you're talking about the leaders of this world, I mean, what can this book do, and how crucial is it for leaders with decision-making powers to create just and fair environments that we're in today? Yes,
because leaders, those who are in power, who have the power to make those decisions, oftentimes, want to get out of that, and they want to say, well, there's nothing I can do. Well, we saw in 2020, you can do something. You came out with those statements. Many companies, this is just a performative action, but those companies that say, oh, we're going to make Juneteenth a holiday, right? You had the power to make that decision, right? Even though, again, it wasn't necessarily going to change the world, but you had the power to make that decision. You have the power to say, we're going to interrogate our data. You have the power to say that the next hire is going to be an African-American. You have the power to say to your leaders who are saying, I'm uncomfortable, to say, you need to get over it because this is what we're going to do. And so those leaders need the courage to step up. And in order to have that courage, you have to really believe in it. You have to really believe that it's going to change the world, that it's going to be good for your organization. Anybody who's read Heather McGhee's The Sum of Us recognizes that, if you don't recognize that when you hurt, a group of people, or when you do things and set policies like voter suppression, which disproportionately hurts groups of people, it hurts everybody. And so unless you get that Citibank did a study right around 2020, just after the George Floyd murder, it came out, that said that the United States was losing $16 billion in gross national product because of discrimination. So it hurts everybody. And until you get that in your head as a mental model, that what you're doing is not just for Black people, it's not just for brown people, it's not just for the LGBTQIA community, it's for everybody when we advance justice.
I want to ask, in any workplace, whether it's my job, your job, anywhere we go, shopping or anything, why should we put diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice in the forefront of those workplaces? Why should that always come first?
Yeah, so it starts with the individual, right? So people come, to work, to earn a living, to be valued, to be respected, to be noticed, to be seen, if you will, and put in quotes, but to be seen and to be heard. And if you don't recognize that each of us is different, there are no two people exactly alike, no matter what your race, gender, color. Sometimes I ask the question in a session, I'll say, raise your hand if you have brothers and sisters, and people raise their hand. So keep your hand raised if you were raised by the same, household, same parents. Some hands go down, but hands stay up. I'll say, keep your hand raised if you're just like your brothers and sisters. All hands go down. So no two people are exactly alike, right? So we have this diversity, and in order for people to be motivated, in order for people to be productive, they have to feel that they're heard, valued, and respected as an individual. So diversity really does start, with the individual. And then we have to recognize that when there are groups of people who have similar outcomes, right? There's not equity, they have similar outcomes, that we are hurting, we're hurting everyone. We're hurting everyone by, so if we don't raise wages, everybody is impacted. If we're not setting policies that prioritize people's well-being, everybody is hurt by that. So there are a lot of things that we don't do, if we did do, it would benefit the whole.
I'm not sure if you have the book with you next to you right now, but if you do, can you give us one of your favorite lines, oh, she has it. One of your favorite parts, lines in the book that you really, that you always jump to, always think about when looking at this book?
Well, one chapter that I wrote is called The Minimization, Demonization, Weaponization of Racial Justice Concepts. And that's chapter 2. So I start chapter 2 is I laughed, an incredulous one, mind you, when a roving news reporter asked random people if they were for or against critical race theory. One older white man said with disdain that he was definitely against it. The reporter then asked him what CRT was. He said he did not know, but knew it was not good and should be banned in schools. So why that's one of my favorite lines in the book is that there are so many people who just don't know, so many people who are ignorant, but look at a news bite or take one thing. And again, it's about a zero-sum game. Somebody says, oh, critical race theory, which was never taught in schools anyway, right? It was a theory about, in law school that was taught around why aren't we making progress? With all this legislation, as you may not well know, Kimberly Crenshaw coined the term, we have all of this legislation, but nothing is happening. Why is that the case? But we've demonized that term. And so that's why it's like, do your homework, folks, really learn. And now with what's happening in Florida and other parts of the country, but Ron DeSantis being so vocal and saying AP Black history can no longer be taught because it's irrelevant. I mean, we are in culture wars. I mean, for somebody to actually say that the history of a people has no educational merit, and for the College Board to then, change the curriculum as a result of that, that's demonization, that's weaponization, right? By taking these concepts. So I think the important part of this book is when we talk about racial justice at work, know the truth, know the truth. And so in this chapter, what I first say, we have quotes, a quote from a person at the beginning of every chapter. And this quote says, fear does not care about facts. Fear does not care about facts. And so we are in this place where people are so afraid that they're going to lose if we enact justice to correct the harm that has been done. So they're saying, nope, you can't know the truth. You know, the 1619 Project, which is now on Hulu, but it was under attack, right? Pulitzer Prize winning, right? Nicole Hannah-Jones, but it was under attack. So we don't want to know the truth. So this book is about opening up the truth, talking about the truth, but also it goes further to say, and if you're really about justice, that's what you say you're about, then these are some things you can do about it in these particular areas that are interconnected. And we focus on the workplace. So we don't get into the criminal justice system or law enforcement in this particular book, because again, we're focused on the workplace and what people experience with policies and practices in the workplace that are not justice centered.
Well, I want to end off with this, Ms. Winters. I know that you also have a summit coming up next week, February 15th through the 16th.
Yes.
Let people know about that and everything it has, whatever you got, what you all are doing. I'm sorry.
No problem. Yeah, so we're launching the book. The book comes out, will be on the market February 14th, but you can do pre-orders right now on Amazon. But I would also recommend that you look at your independent bookstores. And if you go to our website, www.wintersgroup.com, you will see a list of Black-owned bookstores throughout the country. And our summit is about launching the book and providing some of the thought leadership from folks on my team who will be sharing their ideas in these sessions. So each day it's from 12 to 5, it's not taking up your whole day. And we have people who will be talking about their chapters. I'm doing a keynote that's called Trends, Tragedies, and Triumphs. Where do we go from here? And then we have people who will be talking about resistance and how do you handle the resistance that you get from doing this work. We'll have somebody who will be talking about a radical shift in consciousness. Lee Morrison, who wrote that chapter, will be talking about a radical shift in consciousness and how we need that in order to enact some of the things that we're talking about in this book. We have Gabby Gonzalez, who is going to be talking about HR, Marisha Reese, who's going to be talking about bias in procurement. So we have a lot of sessions. And if you sign up, it's only $150 for the 2 days. And if you sign up, you'll get an e-copy of the book. And you will also, the session will be recorded and it will stay online for 3 months. So if you can't attend a particular session, if you've got another meeting or something, you'll still be able to have access to it. So go to our website, www.wintersgroup.com, and you will find out all about the summit. And thank you for lifting that up, Malik.
Thank you. No, thank you. This was great. Everybody, sounds like a good deal to me, honestly. So make sure you all sign up for the summit and get this amazing book. Ms. Winters, I want to thank you so much for coming on and speak with us about this book, about everything you all have going on. We appreciate you here rolling out. Before you go, let the people know again where they can find the book, when it comes out, and where they can find you as well on social media or anywhere.
Right. So the book you can find wherever books are sold. Again, but I recommend and highly recommend that you seek out independent bookstores as well as Black-owned bookstores, which you can find at www.wintersgroup.com, and social MF Winters and Winters Group. We have a large presence on social media, on LinkedIn. We discontinued Twitter, so we're no longer on Twitter because of Elon Musk and some of his practices. But we are on Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, and you can find us there, thewintersgroup.com.
Well, you heard it here first. Thank you so much again, Ms. Winters, for coming on and speak with us about racial justice at work, practical solutions for systemic change, and everything you have going on. Like I said, we're here supporting you and rolling out. We appreciate you and the other 11 writers for coming up with this book, and we'll definitely be supporting you along the way.
Thank you so much. Be
Definitely.
well.
Thank you. Thank you so much, everybody. for checking us out. This is Rolling Out, Meet the Author. Your host, Malik Brown, my special guest, Mary Frances Winters.